So guys, it's been a while since we've covered the 5.0 Boss modular engine, and I wanted to go over a few different things so that we'd have a recap, because we are preparing to set this engine in the car for transport, because as you know, we're going to be moving to new facilities. So once we move to those new facilities, we're going to have some different aspects and some different things with this engine that we can do. Of course, the last thing that I'm working on for this engine, besides the crank dampener that I was going to select, it'll be an 8-rib ATI. I don't know what size I'm going to go with just yet, but I want to be able to get that secured before I secure this last valve cover. That valve cover isn't secured just so that I can lock those cams in, lock everything in, and get proper torque when I do put that dampener on, since I can't hold it from the back of the engine. Now, of course, the Coolant crossover mod, and this is from the company that shall not be named, MMR. I had to go with some set, and they had a good price on the set. I was able to get it for a deal, and it's solid billet metal. How much can you really mess up solid billet metal? Well, I can tell you. They didn't clean up the fittings or the connections at all, and there was a lot of spare stray metal in them from the machining process. So I cleaned all that stuff out, checked over them good, and now we're going to go ahead and thread those in. A lot of different things with this engine, of course. You know, it's forged, title worn, custom cams, because that's, of course, the plug. And from Matt Haynes, we have the NEP intake. It's a very good intake. It's also got an adapter that I got elsewhere with basically what the adapter does is it adapts the B head intake cover onto this engine so that you can keep the same throttle body and the appearance, because honestly I like the B head cover intakes better than the C head intakes. But this is a C intake with bell mounts and short runners, and it's a fully custom intake all the way around. I'm excited to run that bad boy. That's going to be real fun. So, hello. All that said, the engine is ready to go. Had the valve covers going for everything. The last thing I'm going to do is throw in these fittings here, and we'll basically be done with the process of this engine. We'll be able to move this engine out. We'll do a force lubricant mod to basically just force lubricate the engine and turn everything over before we actually start this engine. This engine's been sitting for a while as a long block, and once we did the timing and everything, it was still a long time after that process. So basically, this kit comes with your fittings, and you get 3 fittings because you want to thread this in on each side, 1, 2, 3, and this is to keep the back cylinders, you know, cylinder 7, 8, cool, especially when you're in performance mode, so to speak, you know, wide open throttle, sending it, boost, that stuff like that. So, of course, they have several fittings. Now, we're going to thread these fittings into each boss where they belong. But what I'd like to do, of course, is since these are in the back of the engine and you don't want any faux pas going on with this, I'll apply a little bit of Permatex thread sealant. It's got PTFE in it. Not a lot. You don't want to get carried away with this stuff. There is a good bit of it. But we don't want any problems with this threading once it's in the engine. And I don't want this leaking from behind the engine when I'm driving, because it's one of those, oh, well, I'll deal with the stupid coolant leak types of situations. Oh, getting carried away there, about to waste it out of the bottle. Okay, so I just want to apply that lightly to it and then thread each one in where they need to go, like so. And that's very easy to do. There's no big deal with this. I just don't want this to leak, because leaking would be very bad, and we don't want any leaking when we're sending it, and you don't want any coolant leaks that you find out about later after you've got this thing together. So what I go ahead and do is I've got those applied, and you don't want to apply it too excessively, just enough to thread everything in. And with all those fittings threaded in, get to my last fitting, and as you can see, this stuff goes a long way. I'll just put this little last bit on this threading here. Easy. And that's more threads than will be used in this application. But we'll put it on the back end like so. It's out of the way. It's not going to get in the way of any of the transmission or any of that installation, and I dropped it. It's not going to get in the way of the transmission. It's not going to get away in the way of any of the other things that I have to put on the engine towards the back. So I'm just going to slightly thread that like so in and call it a day. Now, I'm not calling it a day completely. We have a wrench and we're going to tighten it down because you want the fittings to be tight. So see that? Ratcheting wrench, 11/16 for these fittings. And we're just going to send it, send it, send it until you can't send it no more. There we go. That's threaded in very well. Because we do, I can't stress this enough. You don't want this leaking. You don't want this leaking at all. So we just want to be sure that we get all that on the engine tight. Now when I take the engine off this hoist, or when I take the engine off this stand with the hoist rather, I'm going to put it in the vehicle or back in the engine box. I haven't decided on that just yet 100% because transportation for it is going to be a process. So towards the back of the engine where these plates from MMR go, and for most coolant mods, you have what do you like to say, your freeze plugs back here. Those freeze plugs have to pop out, and then these get bolted on after the fact. So they have a seal and a gasket on them as well, and you want to make sure that that seal is tight. When you do this, you want to make sure the seal integrity is okay before you tighten them up or install them. There we go, just like so. And we got our last fitting here. Flip that wrench over. May have to hold it with this ratcheting wrench, but nonetheless, we'll get this knocked out. I'm excited, all in all, to have this engine set up. We'll double check all our torque on all our bolts with the torque wrench to ensure that everything that was supposed to be torqued down was torqued down and that nothing was missed. And then once we do that, that's literally a wrap. I reiterated that a few times, but hey, let's get this in. It's time to run it. It's been long enough between this and other projects going on, different life things, situations, circumstances, and more. I'm just ready to get it in the car and running. And the last thing I have to do is get with PBR, Power by the Hour, and or PBH rather, and get all this stuff installed so we can have the transmission set up. You already know we're doing that 10R80 because we're going to do the FAFO. Going to fool around and find out for the sake of YouTube. And, well, we're going to get this thing done. I don't really have that much more, but I did want to give an update. That was some of the last things I was doing to this. We're still getting the boost on the Marauder, and we're still working on the Kenny Bell Cobra as well. So don't forget to smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell also so you get notifications for the next time I upload, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I really appreciate all the support. If you're in here, don't forget to check out the BST4 channel as well, especially for my Mustang guys, because this guy's always building stuff out there with these cars and using a very, very small amount of money to do it. And it's always impressive, and honestly, it inspires me to keep going as well. So don't forget, I'll leave that link in the description at the bottom. Shoot my boy a sub. Definitely check it out. It's about Crown Vics, but it's still the modular motor. It's about the Grand Marquis, but at the end of the day, still a mod motor. And there's a lot of projects going on out there. So, hey, thanks for the support, guys, and I'll see you guys around.